Imagine this. You walk into a room where every wall is lined with identical portraits. The faces in the frames are smiling, but their eyes are empty, soulless replicas of ambition drained long ago. The air hums with applause, but not for excellence, for compliance. Someone just got a promotion for not making waves. Another was awarded a medal for being dependable. Somewhere in the back, a genius sits in silence, unrecognized, his ideas too radical to be comfortable. You are in a world where the average is celebrated, where safety is virtue, where greatness is suspect, and the terrifying part, you've lived in this world your whole life. We all have. Have you ever wondered why the person who challenges the system is labeled a threat, while the one who smiles, nods, and does just enough is handed the keys to the kingdom? Why the brave are often broken, while the agreeable are rewarded? There's a lie embedded so deeply in modern society that it feels like truth. Just do your part, don't rock the boat, and everything will work out. But what if that's the very reason the boat is sinking? We tell children to dream big, then ask them to pick between standardized tests and socially approved career paths. We glorify innovation, but in practice, punish those who think differently. We post inspirational quotes about changing the world, yet reward those who adapt most efficiently to the world as it is. Isn't that a contradiction worth exploring? The average employee gets praised for being punctual. The average student is rewarded for memorizing. The average citizen is praised for obedience. Meanwhile, those who question, who stretch, who dare, are called arrogant, rebellious, even dangerous. And so, mediocrity becomes institutionalized. Not through some grand conspiracy, but through 1,000 small, invisible incentives. Promotions given to the unremarkable but loyal. Fame granted to the most inoffensive voices. Applause handed out for meeting expectations, not exceeding them. Ask yourself, when was the last time society truly celebrated a truth-teller? Not the kind that wins posthumous awards, but the ones who speak when it's unpopular, uncomfortable, or inconvenient. How often are they elevated, and how often are they erased? You see, mediocrity isn't just a personal failing. It's a system. A reward loop. A subtle but ruthless algorithm that trains you, every single day, to lower your standards just enough to fit in. You might feel it already. That faint inner pull to not say too much in meetings. To not aim too high with your ideas. To hide your intensity, your excellence, your fire, because deep down, you know, it makes people uncomfortable. You know the rules, even if no one ever said them out loud. Don't be too much. Don't think too differently. Don't stand too tall. But who made these rules? And what happens to a culture where no one dares to break them? Mediocrity, when reinforced long enough, becomes virtue. Passion becomes impractical. Depth becomes dangerous. Originality becomes taboo. And here's the paradox no one wants to face: the more you conform, the more you're rewarded, not because you're doing great work, but because you are no longer a threat. Let that sink in. You're not rewarded for excellence. You're rewarded for predictability. So the next time you wonder why the loudest voices say the least, why the most successful people often seem the most hollow, or why your brightest ideas never leave your notebook, remember, this world wasn't built to elevate brilliance. It was built to preserve order. And order demands that we reward the safe, the obedient, the mediocre. But why? Why would a society suppress excellence in favor of stability? What psychological and philosophical forces are at play beneath this cultural architecture? To answer that, we have to go deeper, into the unconscious mind of society itself. Why does mediocrity feel so comfortable? Not just accepted, but expected. Praised, normalized, even admired. You've seen it, the colleague who never challenges ideas but climbs the ladder anyway. The influencer who parrots cliches but gains millions of followers. The student who memorizes facts without understanding them, and earns straight A's. But beneath all these surface-level outcomes lies something far more insidious, a collective fear of chaos. Carl Jung once wrote that every step forward in psychological development means a step toward greater consciousness, a more painful, more complicated life. The human mind, wired for safety, doesn't crave truth. It craves order. And mediocrity, in its bland, stable form, offers the illusion of just that. Excellence, on the other hand, is dangerous. It threatens equilibrium. It shakes the ground others are standing on. It forces uncomfortable questions. Why didn't I try harder? Why didn't I think of that? Why do I feel so far behind? So the crowd learns to mistrust brilliance, not consciously, but instinctively. And society, wanting to avoid existential unrest, builds institutions that reward conformity. School systems grade you not on original thought, but on correct answers. Workplaces reward not disruptive innovation, but team players. Governments prefer obedient populations to critically engaged ones. As Aldous Huxley warned in Brave New World, the greatest threat to freedom isn't pain, it's comfort. When you numb a population with entertainment, distraction, and superficial success metrics, you don't need to imprison their bodies. Their minds will willingly stay inside the cage. But where does this hunger for uniformity come from? Friedrich Nietzsche offers a clue in his concept of the herd instinct. According to Nietzsche, the majority of people fear standing apart from the group. They seek safety in numbers and morality in majority consensus. So if the herd decides that average is good, then anyone who dares rise above becomes immoral, dangerous, even evil. This isn't just a philosophical musing, it's baked into our psychology. Human beings evolved in tribal settings where survival depended on group cohesion. Standing out too much could get you ostracized, exiled, or worse. And even today, in our modern world of skyscrapers and smartphones, that primal fear still whispers in the back of our minds, don't be too different. Don't provoke the group. And yet, ironically, every advance we've ever made as a civilization, scientific, artistic, spiritual, has come from precisely those who did not fit in. So why does the system still push down the exceptional? Because the system isn't designed for human flourishing. It's designed for continuity. Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit, genius hits a target no one else can see." But if no one else can see it, how does the world reward it? Often, it doesn't. Worse, it resents it. You've likely felt this in your own life, the subtle sting of being ignored when you say something bold. The way your creativity is appreciated, but only in small, safe doses. The advice to tone it down, be realistic, know your place. This is how mediocrity maintains itself, not through overt oppression, but through soft discouragement. Through the psychological gaslighting that tells you your excellence is arrogance. That your fire is too much. That your vision is a threat. And so, gradually, we learn to self-suppress. We take the job that won't challenge us. We give the safe answer. We clip our own wings before anyone else has to. Not because we are weak, but because we've been trained to survive in a system that fears those who fly. Even the language we use betrays this. Don't get ahead of yourself. Stay in your lane. Be humble. But humility, as society defines it, often means shrinking to fit the room, rather than expanding the room to fit your true size. So what happens to a culture that rewards the tame, the average, the agreeable? It stagnates. Jean-Paul Sartre believed that inauthenticity, bad faith, is the state of denying our true nature to conform to external roles. When an entire culture lives in bad faith, it becomes spiritually hollow. People don't live, they perform. They don't express, they imitate. They don't create, they consume. Mediocrity, then, is not just a personal compromise. It is a philosophical surrender. It's the death of depth. The erasure of intensity. The quiet burial of what could have been genius. But perhaps the most disturbing part is this: mediocrity isn't enforced by tyrants with whips. It's enforced by the soft pressure of cultural norms, economic incentives, social media algorithms, and peer expectations. The prison is not built with bars, it's built with praise. The guard is not cruelty, it's comfort. And so the question becomes, can you awaken from a system designed to keep you asleep? Before we answer that, we must examine what this worship of mediocrity is truly costing us, not just individually, but as a species. Because the consequences aren't obvious. They're subtle, psychological, cultural, generational, and they're far more devastating than you might think. You don't notice it at first. The lights are still on. The cities still buzz. The markets still move. On the surface, everything seems to function. But something vital is missing beneath it all, a silence so profound it's almost impossible to detect unless you know where to listen. It's in the song that was never written. The breakthrough that was never pursued. The question that was never asked because asking it would have made the room uncomfortable. This is the hidden cost of rewarding mediocrity, the slow suffocation of human potential. Not through violence. Not through collapse, but through comfort. And it doesn't feel like a crisis. It feels like a Tuesday. Psychologically, your mind wants to conserve energy. Neuroscientists call it cognitive ease, the tendency of the brain to prefer ideas that are simple, familiar, and reassuring. It's efficient. It's safe. And it's deadly when stretched over an entire culture. When you live in a society that elevates ease over depth, algorithms over intuition, predictability over mystery, you begin to mistake low effort for wisdom. You mistake agreement for truth. You begin to trust likes, shares, test scores, performance reviews, as if they are reflections of reality, rather than artifacts of a system designed for optimization, not awakening. Your neural circuits prune themselves based on repetition. What you think more. What you neglect, dies. Slowly, your mind conforms to the contours of its environment. And if that environment is mediocre, so too becomes the soul. The result? A generation brilliant enough to solve any problem, yet paralyzed by the need to fit in. Capable of cosmic insight, but addicted to scrolling. You've been told that if you're exceptional, the world will find you. But that's a lie wrapped in sentiment. In truth, the world often misses its geniuses, especially when they're inconvenient. Van Gogh died poor and unrecognized. Emily Dickinson lived in obscurity. Ignaz Semmelweis, the doctor who discovered hand-washing could save lives, was ridiculed into madness. Excellence doesn't always shine. Sometimes, it flickers, and we look away. When society rewards the familiar over the profound, it builds systems to sort people into useful roles, not luminous ones. Schools teach compliance. Corporations demand loyalty. Social platforms reward mimicry. And somewhere in this machinery, a young woman who might have redefined philosophy is now working in HR. A man who could have rewritten medicine is writing emails. A child who could have changed the world learned to stop asking, why, because the teacher didn't have time. This is the true poverty. Not material, but existential. You might think the internet has opened the gates for innovation. And in some ways, it has. But the algorithms are not neutral. They amplify what is safe, palatable, trendable. They do not reward difficulty. They reward dopamine. And so the cycle spins, easy content gets attention. Attention becomes validation. Validation becomes the new metric for meaning. Soon, you stop asking if something is true, only if it's popular. You stop wondering if you're growing, and only wonder if you're performing well. You build your sense of self not on integrity, but on metrics, subscribers, scores, salaries, shares. And when a society begins to outsource meaning to numbers, it loses its soul. Nietzsche warned us, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. But when the why is gone, when the depth is drained, and all that's left is performance, people crumble from the inside out. We live in a time of unprecedented comfort, and record-breaking mental health decline. Why? Because mediocrity doesn't just dull brilliance. It starves the spirit. When you're surrounded by shallow rewards, hollow achievements, and sanitized success stories, your deepest instincts begin to wither. You feel a strange kind of fatigue, not tiredness, but meaninglessness. A weightlessness that doesn't feel like freedom, it feels like drifting. And you begin to wonder, why do I feel so empty if I'm doing everything right? Because you weren't meant to be fine. You were meant to burn. Not in destruction, but in radiance. And when a culture doesn't allow that burning, when it calls it too much, too intense, unprofessional, it creates generations of quiet, smiling ghosts. People who look successful but feel invisible to themselves. People who have careers but no calling. People who have friends but no tribe. People who have everything but feel nothing. When society celebrates mediocrity, it doesn't fall apart dramatically. It just stops evolving. Art becomes repetition. News becomes outrage. Politics becomes theater. Work becomes survival. And no one knows how to change it, because the people capable of reshaping the future have already been convinced that their fire is a flaw. This isn't dystopia. It's something worse. It's apathy disguised as progress. And the longer it persists, the more likely we are to confuse sedation with peace. But peace without truth is just anesthesia. Eventually, something snaps. Not in the world. In you. You wake up one morning and realize that you've played the game too well. You have the degrees, the resume, the network. You did what they told you. You followed the path. You stayed in line, and you feel nothing. That's when you understand, the system didn't fail you. It worked exactly as designed. You were never meant to thrive. You were meant to comply. What if you refused? Not with rage, but with clarity. Not with rebellion for rebellion's sake, but with a hunger for the real. The cracks are already forming. The mask is already slipping. Now, it's time to go further. To dismantle the illusion. To reclaim your fire. But first, what does it truly mean to break free? You don't start a revolution with noise. You start it in silence. In that one still moment where you finally hear the voice inside you, the one you've ignored, suppressed, rationalized into oblivion. It doesn't shout. It aches. And it asks just one question: whose life are you living? You feel it in your chest, not as panic, but as clarity. A sudden awareness that you've spent your years walking someone else's blueprint, checking off boxes that were handed to you by parents, teachers, bosses, culture itself. Boxes labeled successful, productive, normal. But now those boxes feel like coffins. And the rebellion begins. You were trained to comply before you ever learned to question. In school, you raised your hand to speak. In church, you bowed your head to pray. At work, you waited for permission to dream. But no one told you that obedience, when left unexamined, becomes a form of self-erasure. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet, most people never even begin the search, because they're too busy being who they were taught to be. So the first act of rebellion isn't action. It's deprogramming. It's asking, what beliefs do I hold that aren't really mine? What values have I swallowed whole without chewing? What part of me died so I could be acceptable? This is not introspection. This is excavation. You're not trying to improve yourself. You're trying to find yourself under the rubble. The most revolutionary thinkers in history weren't always brilliant, but they were always disobedient. Galileo refused to bow to religious dogma. Sartre rejected bourgeois morality. James Baldwin shattered racial narratives with words that bled truth. Each of them risked alienation. Some risked their lives. Because truth has a price, and mediocrity is cheap. To rebel is to risk being misunderstood. It's to say, I will not be reduced to a resume. I will not outsource my soul to systems that reward predictability over authenticity. You may lose followers. You may lose friends. You may lose your place in the system. But you gain something the mediocre never will: integrity. And integrity is not about being righteous. It's about being whole. You've been told to follow your passion. But passion is fleeting, temperamental, subject to mood, weather, hormones. If you want to find your fire, look at your pain. What breaks your heart? What makes you furious in ways you can't explain? What injustice haunts you even when it doesn't affect you directly? That's where your purpose hides, not in what excites you, but in what wounds you. Nietzsche said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." So go into the chaos. Ask the uncomfortable questions. Trace your rage back to its source. Because your agony is a compass. And it points to the part of the world you were born to heal. The system taught you to value safety, security, stability. It taught you that the good life is one with a steady paycheck, a stable reputation, and no sudden moves. But what if you rewrote the metrics? What if instead of asking, "How much do I earn?" you asked, "How much of me is alive? Am I succeeding?" You asked, "Am I free? Do people approve of me?" You asked, "Would I respect myself if no one was watching?" These are not motivational slogans. These are weapons. Sharp enough to slice through illusion. Strong enough to rebuild a life from scratch. If society wants you numb, then feeling deeply is an act of war. If society wants you small, then claiming your full voice is rebellion. If society rewards mediocrity, then excellence, raw, unpolished, unapologetic, is a revolution. This journey will isolate you. The moment you step off the well-trodden path, the tribe will turn on you. They will call you unstable, ungrateful, unrealistic. They will mock your hunger because it reminds them of their own starvation. You must leave them. Not with contempt, but with clarity. Because out there, past the noise and conformity, you'll find a different kind of tribe. Not a crowd, but a brotherhood of souls on fire. Artists who bleed truth. Thinkers who welcome discomfort. Builders who reject safety for meaning. They don't want your performance. They want your real. And when you find them, something ancient reawakens. Not just connection. Not just community. Home. You were handed a script the moment you were born. Be nice. Stay safe. Don't ask too many questions. Play your role. But that script was written by people who were afraid. Afraid of failure. Afraid of standing out. Afraid of their own voice. And now it's your turn to choose. Will you keep performing the character you were given? Or will you set fire to the script and speak your own minds? This won't be easy. There will be nights you want to crawl back into comfort. There will be days when your own mind turns against you. But there will also be moments of such raw, unfiltered aliveness. Moments when you feel the universe throb in your chest. Moments when you realize you are no longer surviving, you are becoming. You've started to break the spell. You've questioned the system, felt the fire, rejected the lie. You are no longer asleep. But there's one step left. One truth deeper than rebellion. One realization so powerful, it reshapes not just your life, but reality itself. Are you ready? Imagine this. You're standing alone in a room with no noise, no people, no mirrors, no screens. Just silence. No one's watching. No one's judging. No one's rewarding. And in that moment, the question arrives like a whisper pressed against your skull: who are you when there's nothing left to perform? This is the moment the rebellion ends, and the awakening begins. Because here's the truth, you were never at war with society. You were never even at war with mediocrity. The war was always internal. You were fighting a phantom version of yourself, built from fear, stitched together with expectation, kept alive by avoidance. And now, in this stillness, that version begins to die. The final lie: your feelings are always true. All your life, you were told that your feelings are the truest part of you. But what no one told you is this: feelings lie. They lie all the time. Not because they're evil, but because they're ancient. Your feelings were forged in the minds of your ancestors, whose only priority was survival, not truth, not meaning, not transcendence. That anxiety you feel before speaking up in a meeting. That's your nervous system reacting as if a tiger's in the room. That rage when someone disagrees with your beliefs. That's your ego fearing death, not your logic standing tall. You mistake feelings for identity. You call fear intuition. You call guilt morality. You call pleasure truth. But these are just echoes of old wounds. Scripts written in childhood. Tapes left playing from generations past. Your feelings are not facts. They are weather. And if you build your life on the weather, don't be surprised when the storm comes. The self isn't found, it's forged. Here's the paradox that shatters the modern myth. You don't find yourself. You build yourself. Brick by bloody brick. Choice by terrifying choice. The real you isn't hiding in some corner of your soul, waiting to be discovered. It's waiting to be created. It's waiting for you to become the kind of person who can look their fear in the eye and say, not today. This is what Viktor Frankl meant when he wrote that meaning is not something we discover, it's something we create through action, suffering, and decision. You don't wait for confidence. You act with courage in its absence. You don't wait for clarity. You move, and clarity follows movement. You don't wait to feel ready. You decide to be ready. You are not your impulses. You are the one who chooses what to do with them. That's where freedom begins. True power is self-regulation, not self-expression. Modern culture worships authenticity. Be yourself. Speak your truth. Feel your feelings. But no one asks, what if your self is immature? What if your truth is tainted by trauma? What if your feelings are wrong? Real maturity isn't expressing every impulse. It's mastering which impulses deserve expression. This is not repression, it's refinement. It's not being fake, it's being sovereign. To feel anger and choose patience. To feel desire and choose restraint. To feel despair and still choose to rise. That is power. And it is terrifying, because it means you're responsible. No more blaming emotions. No more outsourcing your choices to the fog of how I felt. You are not a slave to the tides of your nervous system. You are the captain of your soul. Every trap you've ever been in was unlocked from the inside. Every limitation you blamed on society, on parents, on trauma, on time, it was real, yes, but the bars were reinforced by your belief in them. The moment you stop identifying with your feelings as truth, you'll see it, the gate was never locked. You just never tried to walk through it. You stayed because it was familiar. Because freedom is cold at first. Because meaning requires responsibility. And because the truth, the real truth, is lonely until you're strong enough to carry it. You don't escape your prison by yelling at the guards. You escape it by realizing you were the architect all along. The world you see is the mind you inhabit. The final realization isn't poetic. It's brutal. Reality is not what you see. It's what you perceive. And perception is filtered through emotion. If you feel unloved, the world becomes cruel. If you feel betrayed, every smile hides a threat. If you feel worthless, every compliment sounds like pity. So if you want to change the world, you don't start with activism or travel or spirituality. You start by retraining the lens through which you view it. You start by asking, what part of me wants to stay broken because it's easier than becoming whole? What belief am I addicted to because it keeps me small and safe? What feeling am I worshiping instead of confronting? The moment you question the lens, you begin to see. And once you truly see, you can never go back. A poetic reckoning. So here you are. No script. No system. No savior. Just you, naked in front of the mirror that doesn't lie. You finally realize, You were never meant to feel your way to truth. You were meant to build it. Brick by brutal brick. Sacrifice by sacrifice. Choice by terrifying, liberating choice. And in the quiet that follows, you don't feel euphoric. You feel grounded. Unshakable. Real. That is the prize. Not happiness. Not peace. But truth. And truth, once tasted, ruins you for anything less. So go. Take this flame with you. Let it burn away everything false. Let it light the faces of others still trapped in their illusions. Because now you know the secret. You can't trust your feelings. But you can trust this: you were born to become something that fear could never build.